Mayor, I'd like to acknowledge a real or perceived conflict of interest due to me being a life member and patron of the Gold Coast Show Society. But I'm going to stay in the room and I'll certainly vote on this issue.
So, Critchlow?
Mr. Mayor, I don't think you can talk about the show like this as a simple entity on its own. The state government gave $11 million to the Turf Club to build a exhibition centre for the Gold Coast Show. And under that deed of grant, the Turf Club had to hand that exhibition centre over to the show 10 days before the show. They haven't done it on any occasion, I don't believe. But not only that, Mr. Mayor, there was a 33-year lease of the offices at the show from the Turf Club to the Show Society, and also I think about 685 square metres of storage space as well. So I think that you have to look at it together. It's no use saying, well, just we think that it's no good there, let them walk away from the $11 million that the state gave them and the 33-year lease, which could turn back into a bar area or whatever. The Turf Club would benefit by the show not being there. But the people of the Gold Coast won't benefit because they've missed out on their show holiday, obviously, if there's no show here on the Gold Coast. They'll miss out on their show holiday. And what do we want? The Gold Coast show holiday to maybe go up to Brisbane for their show holiday? We don't. I don't think it's good enough that we do it this.
We'll deal with one item at a time, if you don't mind, Councillor Critchlow, because there are answers to those questions as we move ahead. So let's just go back to regarding the Gold Coast Show Society, the office space or storage space. That's a agreement between the Turf Club and the Gold Coast Show Society. Our decision there can't influence that one way or another. So the society will still maintain their asset, right? They're not being stripped of that.
No, it's not.
Hold a second. The second point regarding the Gold Coast Show holidays, that's why I'm going to be putting to you, should we consider an alternate venue so that the Gold Coast Show holidays remained in the city, right? So that part of it is not, we haven't given that up either. But however, if, for instance, this motion gets defeated, well, then the next question is like, okay, we're leaving the show there. Now who wants to tear up Gold Coast Ratepayers Fund to at the very least fund it further? That's the question. If as council is going, yeah, we don't mind putting Ratepayers Fund in there and continue to fund that way, well, that's up to the full council to do. I'm just going, if we're going to do this, and then we continue on with another venue, which I want to present to council. But if council don't want to do that, then that's fine. It stops.
But under the agreement with the Turf Club and the Show Society and the 33-year lease, the minute the show, if there's not a show there in 2018, that agreement is null and void. They would have to give up those offices and that storeroom. I've read the agreement.
We're not party to that. That's between the two.
It's between the ratepayers of this city.
That's precisely where it's important. Because if you're to fund 80,000 now, that just brings it, or 76,000, that just brings it to net. The next year, based on that record, that's another 150 to go. You add the two together, that's $250,000. And if you look at the record, they'll continue require that level of funding year in, year out of ratepayers fund. And that's what I'm trying to do, to go, well, we better find a venue that is viable. Well, vote no. It's only a motion that I'm putting in and kill it off. Councillor Auster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question through you to Councillor Critchlow, just so I can get a firmer grasp on her view here. My question to her through you, Mr. Mayor, is Councillor Critchlow of the view that the best location for the Gold Coast show is in fact at the Turf Club? I just want to cut through the clutter and get to the, the bottom line.
Okay, Councillor Critchlow, there's a question for you.
I'm not saying that, Mr. Mayor. What I'm saying is that we should be looking at this as a whole. We should be looking at the Turf Club and the Borrow Pit and the Show Society and Train Tech and how much of, it's 2.7 hectares. If that there's going to be no show there is no need for parking. So how much of that 2.7 hectares become a commercial venture when you, Mr. Mayor, would believe we've got to get money in from sales of assets and that, and by selling Bruce Bishop Car Park, you're basically giving 2.7 hectares of land, which probably worth $12 million, to the Turf Club to extend
no, Councillor Critchlow, there's no gift of Councillor Critchlow. There's no gift of any property to the Turf Club.
Pardon?
I don't recall there's a motion that we're giving $12 million worth of property to the Turf Club.
We have agreed to the filling in of the lake, and we have
Councillor Critchlow, we did not give any property. That's incorrect, and it's also incorrect when you said at the last meeting that the Turf Club wants to take over the show. So
I've got it in writing.
Well, I'm telling you, I got it from the CEO and the chairman, and they do not want it. So I cannot take falsehood from you.
Mr. Mayor, do we have an application that's been sitting in this council from Train Tech to extend Train Tech into that Borrow Pit land and ask council to extend the lease to 50 years?
Take that question on notice.
No, I think it's important that we...
I just told you, I'll take the question on notice. Councillor Critchlow, take your seat.
Well, you're aware of this
Take your seat, Councillor. Rightio. Now, just bear with me. Councillors, I moved the motion. More than happy for anyone else to move a different motion, right? And go from there. Because the amount of work that's already done, I'm happy to, whichever way you want to do. Councillor Corley.
Mr. Mayor, I guess the only thing is that it's not really apparent is there a contingency in terms of if the show society follows our suggestion in this motion and doesn't hold the show there, that it is contingent, that council therefore would provide support and things like that. Because at the moment, the motion on its own doesn't do any more than suggest that they move it off. So,
yeah, I've got further motions to come through, but based on this one here, if for instance that we want to leave it there, then we've come to the cross point like we did last time, that how much funding do we want to put in towards the show, and then I'll be reminding everyone that don't forget this is an ongoing deficit. There will be funding from the ratepayers.
Well, I mean, obviously your approach, Mr. Mayor, was to take these in certain steps, but perhaps it would be beneficial if we could look at what's coming and look at it as a whole.
Okay. Okay, that means that, right, the reason why I wanted to take one part of the time is that if the show does not go for at the Turf Club, right, then other venue we can have full discussion with all the members of our council. Nobody's left behind. That is, Councillor Gates can have input on other venues area, another location, because she might have another location that I didn't think of. I don't presume to have or the location in the city marked out. You know, but where we're at, the fundamental part is that you can leave the show there and you can continue to fund it as we talked about last meeting. Otherwise, move another motion and fully. Councillor Owen Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just following on from Councillor Caldwell, and your answer in regards to Councillor Gates makes a lot of sense in terms of benefiting from her knowledge, particularly given the fact the north of the city probably houses some of the larger areas of broadacre land that may also be useful for a future show precinct. But I think I agree with Councillor Caldwell in terms of if we could at least get a preview of what the totality of the proposed resolutions are, I think it would make it easier.
In money?
No, not in money, just in regards. So this is the first step off what I'm assuming you may have 2 or 3 different steps to
I'll
come.
put it up.
I think if we could see it and then we could deal with this one, gain the benefit of Councillor Gates returning to the room because we've dealt with the Turf Club, but at least we've got some foresight or what's on the horizon in regards to what you're thinking.
So based on that, I'll just put to you that I'll revise some of those, what I'm saying to you. I'll repeat it again once Councillor Gates returns to the room because she's not privy to the current discussion. Councillor Tozer?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is in 2 parts and it relates to a comment that was made by Councillor Critchlow. It pertains to that $11 million allocation to the Gold Coast Turf Club to make to provide for the Gold Coast Show Society to hold a show. I don't understand all the details around that, but 2 things. Is that a true statement? Did that actually occur? And could you comment on that in the context of your negotiations with both the Turf Club and Show Society about the matters we're discussing today?
Okay. The state government promised the vicinity of something like $40 million initially. And post-election was trimmed down to 11. And the 11, we all thought it was going to go to the Gold Coast Show Society, but it didn't. It went to the Turf Club. And they built the facility. You know? And so the parties is the state government, the Gold Coast Turf Club. If you're the Turf Club, you say, well, we'll build that, but it'll be on our land. So they agreed to do that. So, and the Gold Coast Show went, well, it's designated, they've got to go there. There's no other choice. There's no other, in the city, state government made a decision to move them out from where they were and move to the Turf Club. And regardless of the feasibility, the traffic and all that, it's basically, there's no other choice. That's my understanding of it. So fast forward, they've run it for the last 4 years, and that's where the difficulty is. One can question that really the ongoing subsidy of the negative cash flow, perhaps the state government should be doing it. Perhaps they should be putting in $150,000 a year because the parkland that they've basically acquired, it's assets that they took off the Show Society. And pay a small amount of $11 million, and the Show Society actually didn't get it, went to the Turf Club. So one could say, well, maybe the state should be funding this if they want to maintain at the show. However, I mean, as I'm going through, there is the last part that I was going to put to you to write to the state government also to help with longevity of the show, right? So that's later on. You know, right now, the time's ticking. We could go, well, let's just forget about that motion and just move a motion that the mayor writes to state government to help subsidise the show society, full stop, and stay at the same venue. That is an option.
So is it fair or reasonable to say that the $11 million the state government allocated to solve the Gold Coast show problem was used to build a building that is no longer meeting the needs of either entity for the purposes of holding the show. Is that right? Like $11 million is gone. It's built a building.
It's met the need of the Turf Club.
But not the Show Society.
No.
Right. And have we had any conversations with the state about that at this stage on behalf of the Show Society as the local government?
No.
Okay.
The conversation to a person or the entity that made the decision, they know full well what happened.
Right.
That's where we're at. And from the last motion that we had, that the motion that we wish to help the Gold Coast Show Society.
Yeah.
So I went and did my best to find venue, how to fund it, new entities, etc. And that's what I'm presenting you today. But there's more than one solution, as I just said to you, that maybe the motion is just right to the state government, full stop.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
I don't need to stand for you.
It's okay.
All right.
We've heard what the Gold Coast Turf Club wants and doesn't want. We really need to know what the Show Society wants, and I would really like to hear from the Divisional Councillor Baildon here, because I know that we've been approached to help them out, and I know that, you know, it was a state government decision for it to go to the Turf Club, but I don't believe it's been successful. I don't believe that the Gold Coast Show Society thinks it's been successful either. I would really like to hear from Councillor Baildon.
Were you here at the last meeting?
No, I wasn't.
All right. Just a quick recap. Basically, we were looking at around $150,000 to help fund the show. That means around $80,000 or $76,000 to pay off the current debt. Right, so they're in the hole. And then the next amount of money is to help fund it minimum amount. And I asked around and said, well, this is not it's only a Band-Aid. So if you write out a check for $150,000, we'll be having this discussion again next year. And then the question is that, well, should we look at alternative to make sure that if we're going to spend 150, spend it to something, a venue or another entity, so that that we haven't torn up any council ratepayers' funds. So what does that mean? It means that the debt of $76,000, well, that needs to be negotiated with the creditors. And I said that, well, if that entity is going to be wound up, they need to really negotiate, and I left it at that. Right? So I don't think it's prudent. That's what I said at the last meeting, for us to put in $150,000 and then having to have this discussion again, and it'll be same magnitude yearly from the ratepayers, because you don't see anything for it except the show goes on. Then we resolved that we want the show to go on. How do we do it? So I went, okay, how to do is to talk to everyone involved and find out what's their end game. Talk to the Turf Club. They went, well, we're happy to help for 1 or 2 years, but we're really not interested, because the comment by Councillor Critchlow, they want it, and they don't. Right? So I don't care.
Clarification, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Clarification, thank you very much. It said here, in January this year from Brett Cook, the offer by the Gold Coast Turf Club to help run the Gold Coast show is genuine and is still on the table if needed. And if they want to relocate down the track, we have no problems. That was January this year.
All
It
right.
was happy to.
Where was that?
Pardon?
Where are you reading it from?
I'm reading from an email sent to me from Brett Cook. Thank you.
Well, I've met with him, and the answer is they don't want it.
Well, there you go, Mr. Mayor. That's what it's all about.
All right. Well, anyhow, I'll go back to Councillor O'Neill. So what I did was I met with the Guild, right? Luke's done some meetings, and we worked through, crunched some numbers, and looked at various venues, which I intend to table here today, alternatives. But in my own mind, I didn't want to just talk about alternative venue until all councillors are in here, back, in other words, Councillor Gates are back. so that she might have some other ideas, other venue. She can't discuss regarding the turf club because of material conflict of interest. So I said, right, I thought in my own mind, I went, right, well, let's discuss as a council where we want to go regarding the Gold Turf Club itself, the location. However, if the council went, well, we've considered everything, I still want the show to be there, and for instance, we want to add that the state government should fund the 150,000 a year. You can always ask, and we continue with the turf club there. You see, but I don't think ratepayers should be funding something like this of 150,000 a year every year, because I don't think ratepayers will be that supportive of it. Councillor Belden.
Mr Mayor, I noticed that the current motion before council has not been seconded, and I could perhaps suggest an alternate motion, or if you want to, would you like that?
Yeah, I would. I mean, it's not a motion now. I moved it. I didn't get a second.
My suggestion is that council considers the current venue for the Gold Coast show as unsatisfactory, that in consultation with the state government, that they investigate alternate sites for the Gold Coast show in the future.
All right. Well, we can do that, and I would say that just bear with me. I'm just thinking through that the next lot of motion that I've got in mind regarding other venues, and once we narrow down to the one that we want, then we hit the state government up with that one, you see.
Whatever.
You know, just bear with me.
You could just park this.
That's what I was getting at, Gary. The Show Society don't stay there, do they? They don't stay there.
Well, we don't know.
Well, that's what you were told, weren't you? That they think it's unsatisfactory at the turf club. Mr Mayor?
Okay, councillors.
Resolutions are.
What, just talking to the CEO, just bear with me. Just talking to the CEO, what we can do is just park this motion, it's not even a motion, park this discussion for a minute. I'll recall Councillor Gates, she might want to go now, I'm not talking. What I'm getting at is just discuss other venue location in our city. You know, it might be that Councillor Gates might go, well, I don't have any other ideas, so I have no need to discuss. All right, just bear with me. Do you want to go and ask Donna if she wants?
Mr Mayor, at point of order, if I might, just to assist perhaps with this situation, it may be good to have a procedural motion whereby we suspend the standing orders, the council, to enable that as a discussion point. That might include Councillor Gates. No, to suspend standing orders as regards to this discussion about this topic. So there's no motion, but there'd obviously be a discussion possibly involving Councillor Gates. So to avoid all of those issues in regards to conflicts of interest, declarations and so forth, the procedural motion might help. I'm just suggesting that while the CEO's here.
Mr Mayor, I'd suggest that won't quite get you there. It's the standing orders really relate to local laws, etc., and procedures, but not the clear legislative obligation to declare conflicts or material personal interest. So, but there is a way in which you can.
The easiest way, first up, Mr CEO, is that I've asked the CEO to talk to Councillor Gates whether she wants to participate in alternative venue. If the answer is no, you just go straight into it. If she says yes, I would ask you to refrain to talk about the current location. and we just look at other alternatives. And once we come down to the venue we like, that's when we hit the state government up for it. Don't forget, the whole aim of this is about the show continues to go on. There's no other reason why we're putting so much effort, or I put so much effort into it prior to this, because I've taken the council's policy or view that we want the show to continue. There's no other reason, right? So that's why we continue to Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering if there's any urgency for this to be dealt with today.
It's because I think we all felt that we want the show to continue for 2018, for this year, and for us to leave it. Let's say we found another venue, and there will be planning to be done, traffic to study.
Well, I'm just wondering, for the next council meeting, if there's an opportunity to have a workshop, because I'd certainly like for the board of the Gold Coast Show to come in and we might choose a location that really doesn't suit the show. And so I'd just like to hear what they have to say too, with all the information. I mean, we've got a lot of information here. We haven't really discussed it. And I just felt that if we have a workshop and then it can come back to the next council meeting, we can sit down, go through it all, have representatives from the Show Society here and come up with a good resolution. Okay. Because, I know that you're talking about a separate entity altogether. And so there's a lot to discuss to make sure that the show continues on. I'd like to see us have a workshop. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Well, there's an idea of a workshop. Councillor Critchlow?
Just a quick question, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned that you don't really want to see the ratepayers paying $150,000 a year out. But how much rent do we get from Train Tech? How much rent do the ratepayers get from Train Tech on an annual basis? Is it $170,000?
But how is that related? What I'm getting at is, whatever rent you get, that's good revenue. So, and how you spend your money, how you earn your revenue, and how you spend is two different questions. Just because let's say they gave us $500,000 even, you still wouldn't want to spend $150,000 on something that's not viable.
No, but the question was, how much rent are we getting from Train Tech?
Well, the answer is it's not relevant. It can be $200,000. It can be $150,000. You still don't want to spend ratepayers' fund for something that's it's not going to be viable or ongoing expenditure.
And is there an application in to reduce that rent for Train Tech?
I don't know. Sorry, I don't accept the question.
You can't answer.
No, I didn't accept it. All right. Right. Okay. Well, just bear with me. Let me put to you Councillor McDonald's idea that we should have a workshop and ask for various, I think, open it up for other entities that they want to give us input. And I think it's not a bad idea. I mean, if we can get going on that, so that as far as everyone's concerned, you might have some ideas of other venues and locations, and I'm happy to chair that workshop, Councillor. So, what do you think?
Yep, that's the best.
We good? Yeah. All right. Don't need a motion for that, do I, Mr. CEO? Okay, so we're going to do a workshop. So I'll ask Mary to be in contact with you. We'll find out the availability of the president, secretary of the Show Society, and whoever else they want to bring in. And I think we'll just have it right here or upstairs, or the venue to be advised. Good idea, Councillor McDonald. Councillor Caldwell.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to remind everyone of the second resolution point from last week was that council commits to working with the state government and the Gold Coast Show Society to to consider venue options for the Gold Coast Show and a sustainable permanent home for the show in future years. And, you know, that essentially still wraps up exactly what Councillor Baldwin had just read out. So I think there's already an operative resolution of council that puts it out there sufficiently. I would urge you or the CEO to bring the state government into the loop as soon as possible. And I think for today, I think we should avoid making any broad statements that the turf club is not the appropriate venue, because with sufficient money, for example, they might decide it is an appropriate venue and the state government may well fund that. But the minute we start saying we don't want it here and we want it over there, believe me, we are going to own that thing for all of its good and all of its bad that comes in the future. Whereas at the moment, the state government has at least some moral obligation, having directed them to go to the turf club to make that work. Whether it's at the turf club or elsewhere, the state government have to take a role in making it a successful and viable proposition for the city. And so I think we need to just be very calm about this and make sure that we navigate our way through in consultation with everyone. And I think we can probably get to a successful show this year.
Okay. All right. So, councillors, delete those items there. Good. All right. And then just put regarding 14.1, workshop time and venue to be confirmed. All right. So stand by your email. Okay. 14.2, Mr. CEO. Briefing. There's no briefing.
Councillor Gates.
Councillor Gates.
Forgot about it. Could you ask Councillor Gates to come in?
We won't tell you.
Right. Councillor Gates, welcome back. 14.2, no briefing from the CEO, meeting closed. 14.19.